The last analysis that we did using the Book 2 data was a factorial analysis of variance. The factors that we used were Father's Education Revised and math grades. The dependent variable was math achievement. And when we did that analysis, our results found that levels of Father's Education Revised did differ significantly on average math achievement scores. Students who had mostly A and B or less than A and B did differ significantly on math achievement. But importantly, the Father's Education Revised by math grades interaction effect was also significant. So what that tells us is that we cannot interpret Father's Education Revised independently of math grades. The differences between, for example, students who have mostly A's or B's in math and those who have less than A or B in math on mean math achievement is really dependent on the level of Father's education. So in order to tease out those effects, what we can do is a simple effects analysis. And in SPSS, we have our data coded as math grades. Students who earned less than AB are coded as 0, and students who earned mostly A and B are coded as 1. And then for Father's education levels, high school or less is coded as 1, some college is coded as 2, and BS or more is coded as 3. So in order to make the comparisons of math grades at each level of Father's education, we need to create 6 cell codes. And we can do this using SPSS, using the transform function. So in this case, if we go to transform and compute variable, we can develop a variable called cell code. And we want to go to type and label, and we're going to call it 6 new cell codes. Okay. And then we'll go continue. Now we're going to create our first cell code, so we're going to label the first cell code as 1, and then we're going to go to the if selection and include cases if they satisfy the first condition. So the first condition that we're going to look at or create is a cell or a code, if you will, for those students who have less than AB in math, and students who have a high school, and students' fathers who have a high school diploma or less. So we'll pick math grades from our group of variables, and then we'll say that equals 0. So those are students who have less than A or B in math. And then we'll come down and choose Father's Education Revised, and we'll go equal 1. So now what we've done is we've chosen those students who have math grades of less than AB and whose fathers have a high school diploma or less. And then we'll go continue, and then we'll click on OK. Now what you'll see in SPSS is that a new variable is created. This variable is called cell code, and within that variable we've now labeled as 1 those students who have less than AB in math and whose fathers have high school diploma or less. So now what we want to do is create our second cell code. So now we're going to create a cell code that identifies those students who have mostly A and B in their math courses, and their fathers have a high school diploma or less. So we'll go to transform again and compute. And so we can leave everything the same here, except we want to make this a 2 for our second cell code, and then we want to go to if, and now we're going to make math grades equal 1, so that now we're going to identify those students who have mostly A and B in math and whose fathers have a high school diploma or less. We go continue and we go OK, and we want to change the existing variable, so we go OK, and then you'll notice that we now have 2s in our cell code column. These 2s are those students who have mostly A and B and whose fathers have a high school diploma or less. So now we're going to continue, and we're going to create our third cell code. Now our third cell code is going to be students who have less than AB, but now we're moving to our second level of father's education. So these are going to be students who have less than A or B in their math grades and whose fathers have some college. And then we'll go continue and then OK and OK again to change the variable. And you notice now we have 3s in our column. So now we're going to go to transform and compute again, and now we're going to create our fourth cell code. And our fourth cell code is going to be for those students who have mostly A and B and whose fathers have some college. So now we'll change math grades to 1, but we'll leave the level of father's education the same. And then we'll go continue and OK and OK again. And now you can see we have 4s in the column. So now we're going to create our fifth cell code. And our fifth cell code is going to be now those students who have less than AB, and now we're going to move to the third level of father's education, and so at this level we give that a 3 because now we're at fathers who have a BS or more. And then we go continue and OK and OK. And now you can see we have 5s in the column. So these 5s represent students who have less than AB in math and whose fathers have a BS or more. And then we go to transform again. We're going to create our last cell code, and for this one we're still at the third level of father's education revised, but now we're going to code and identify those students who have mostly A or B. And then we continue and go OK and OK. And so now you see we have some 6s identified. But you also see that we have some empty cells. And the reason we have empty cells is because, for example, if you look at this one, father's education level was not coded. So if the math grade level was not coded or the father's education level was not coded, then we don't get a cell code. They're not identified. So now we have our 6 cell codes. The next thing we want to do is compare these levels to determine where the interaction effect is picking up significance. So what we're going to do is compare students with less than AB to mostly A and B grades for math for each level of father's education revised. So we're going to form 3 contrasts. So our first contrast is comparing less than AB to more than AB at high school or less. Our next contrast will compare less than AB to mostly AB at some college. And finally, our last contrast will compare less than AB to mostly AB at BA or more. So how do we do this in SPSS? We go to Analyze, Compare Means, and One-Way ANOVA. And our dependent variable in this case, of course, is math achievement. And our factor is the 6 new cell codes that we created. Now this is a little bit different than what we've done in the past. We're going to set up these contrasts, and each of the contrasts consists of coefficients. So if you remember, the first contrast was 1, minus 1, 0, 0, 0, and 0. Now, one of the things about linear contrasts is they have to add up to 0. So if this is 1, then this needs to be minus 1. And then the rest are 0. So we make this a 1, add it. Make this a minus 1, add it. 0, 0, 0, and 0. Okay, so now we have our first contrast set up. So what this is going to do is compare mostly AB to less than AB at just high school or less. Then our next contrast, if you remember, is going to be 0, 0, 1, minus 1, 0, and 0. And so this will be a 0, a 0, a 1, then a minus 1, a 0, and a 0. And then our final contrast will be 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, minus 1. Okay, and then we go continue, and we can get the descriptive statistics. We can get the means if we like, and then we can go OK. And so we can see from our output, it's down here, that for each cell code we get the mean. So this would be the mean for the first cell code would be those students who have less than AB and whose fathers had a high school diploma or less. This is the mean for cell code 2, those students who had mostly A's and B's in math and whose fathers had a high school diploma or less, etc. So when we make these three contrasts and we compare them, we see that the ANOVA is significant. So for the first contrast, when we compare students who have less than AB to mostly AB on math achievement within high school or less, we see that that's not significant. When we compare students who have less than AB in math to mostly ABs in math within the level of fathers who have some college, those means are not significant. But where we see a significant difference in this contrast is when we compare students who have less than AB in math to mostly AB in math at the level of fathers who have a BA or more. So that significant interaction effect is being caused by this significant difference between those students who have mostly ABs and less than AB in their math grades on average math achievement at the father's education level of BS or BA or more.